I got my laptop on, and I feel alright. I got a few joints rolled, and my munchies made. Got my headphones on, and I close the door, don't disturb me. It's time to stand up tall and say some things about the shitty world we're living in, with the boys at Raconteurs News. To Raconteurs, Raconteurs, to Raconteurs, Raconteurs, to Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News. Oh yeah.
And good evening, welcome to Raconteurs News. It is Tuesday, the 17th of April, 2018, and what an auspicious occasion it is. It's my wife's birthday, so we're celebrating that, and we are celebrating me still being here, because I need to apologise for last night. I was a tit and dickhead, and I was pissed, and I was done, and I hope that everybody will forgive me for it. I mean to hope. I hopefully mean to never do that again. I was just shit-faced last night. I found a bottle of tequila. I've got a lot of things going on, and I was really out of order. So a big apologies from me for tonight. Guys, what we got on tonight? I've got Andy Young and Paul Webster co-hosting with me this evening on Raconteurs News. How you doing, fellas?
I'm doing very good. Doing very good here, Jason. Thanks, mate. All we can do is move on, and I think tonight we've got a great guest to move on, and brilliant the way it's tied into last week with Mark Steele, because I haven't spoken to tonight's guest for quite a while, but I suddenly found out tonight she's been talking to Mark Steele today. So welcome back to Raconteurs News, Pippa King. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me back on again. It's great to see you all again.
No, it's great to get your information. I actually one of our listeners, John Hall, I had a brilliant chat with him over the weekend. And I mentioned to John that you were coming on, and he said, he said, I've found somebody called Pippa King on whatdotheyknow.com, and she's done a lot of FOIA requests. I said, oh yeah, same girl, that's Pippa. But I would like to give a big shout out to John, because as far as I'm aware, he's the only person on Facebook apart from me with an RN logo as his profile picture, and we really appreciate the support. John's always sharing the shows that he's doing, and he's very kindly agreed to help us out with a little bit of work in the background. That will be absolutely fantastic, and we really appreciate what you're doing, John. Thank you, mate. So, Pippa, where would you like to go tonight?
So, I don't know if anybody sort of knows my background, but I got involved with biometrics used in schools in about 2006 when my children were at primary school, and they were nearly fingerprinted for library systems. So people can go back and listen. There are plenty of other shows sort of in the past few years, but as a result, I campaigned with other parents and privacy organisations to get schools to at least tell parents they were taking children's fingerprints, because the schools weren't telling parents they were taking children's fingerprints, and they were fingerprinting children and sticking their data, biometric data, on databases without telling parents. And of course, children, especially primary school children, my two children were only 6 and 7, if they get told to do something like that, they'll just do it, and they don't question it. And why should they? You know, they're 6 and 7-year-olds. They shouldn't be thinking about sort of that sort of thing. From 2006 to 2010, myself and a group of other parents lobbied to get some sort of change in legislation, because under the Data Protection Act, schools there was obviously data protection was 19 1998, and biometric at all.
If I can just stop you a second, Pippa, we're losing you a bit on the audio there. I wonder if the guys could perhaps turn their cameras off, and we'll see if we can keep it with you with your camera going. That should help the bandwidth.
Okay, is that any better?
That sounds a lot better.
I'll just keep talking and see how it goes. But anyway, so we got some legislation passed in the Protection of Freedoms Act. So now schools do have to inform parents and the students that they're going to take and process their biometric data. So I've had an interest in biometrics really sort of for the past 14 years now, which is a long time, because biometrics weren't used in sort of general society at all, and it was just the school population that were experiencing it. But I had sort of email alerts that were coming in with fingerprinting primarily, because that's the technology that's being used in schools, but also schools were testing facial recognition, iris scanning, infrared palm scanning, voice recognition. There was all sorts of different biometric technologies sort of used in UK schools from sort of 2001 to 2011. But the normal biometric there is fingerprinting. So if anybody has any children at school that are using a fingerprint system, or anybody who's got a child that could be, do let them know that they don't have to participate in it. That data can actually go, the biometric data can go to police and lettered agencies quite legally if they ask for it. So once you put your fingerprint on a scanner, you're sort of at mercy to that algorithm, that fingerprint algorithm, for the rest of your life, really. So it's when you can use a PIN number or a swipe card, there's no reason why you should be fingerprinted in order to eat or have access to library services. So that's my sort of background and my general interest in biometrics. But as I was sort of getting all these email alerts in about what was going on in schools primarily, it started to filter through that the different banking systems were looking at using voice biometrics. And of course, now, over the past 2 years, the explosion in facial recognition is huge. I think really, to me, it's a more invasive form of biometric, because you can participate in a biometric facial recognition system without knowing about it. If you want to participate in a fingerprint system or an iris, you have to make physical effort to go up to the screen. You don't. That can be from surveillance cameras, from body-worn cameras police use, public space, CCTV, Facebook, social media. So there is this sort of covert potential use of facial recognition, and that's what I've really been looking at for the past 2 or 3 years, with how the UK police have been rolling it out and not telling anybody, least of all us, least of all Parliament. It's been a very, I wouldn't say badly run, I think it was purposely badly run, rolled out system, so that literally nobody knows what anybody's doing. In the Home Office, when you ask them questions about it, which is probably what John's seen on What Do They Know website, I just say, well, it's a deployment issue and it's nothing to do with us, which of course it is. So that's really what I wanted to talk about tonight, so that if somebody's at an event,
is there any recourse to get this stuff removed? If you're a child and you've not done anything wrong and you've not committed a crime, you've not done anything, is there any recourse to get this biometric data removed from the database, or is it there forever and you could be stitched up for anything that they want, really, can't you?
Well, the school database should destroy the biometric data as soon as the child leaves. Of course, they should do. Whether or not that's happened or not, you don't know unless you submit a subject access request to the school, which is where the school has to give you all the data they have on you. As far as it going across to police forces, you can request that your biometric data is deleted if you know it's gone across to a police force. The police can ask schools for fingerprint data, and schools don't have to tell the parents or the children that they've passed that data on. So you wouldn't necessarily know that the police have that data. However, in the Protection of Freedoms Act, which came out in 2012. It was like a tidy up act. So the Conservative and Lib Dem coalition decided that quite a lot of freedoms had gone under the Labour government that we'd had for sort of a good 10 years, for the first 10 years of this century, and they sort of tidied all these little bits up, and in that was DNA and fingerprints. So there's a section in that particular bit of legislation that does detail how long police can hang on to fingerprints, and we now have a biometrics commissioner who oversees that and makes sure police forces are doing it. So in theory, if it has gone across to a police force, they shouldn't really hang on to it for any more than 3 to 6 months if they're not going to use it. But then
but we know that they do, don't we? We know that they'll, as soon as they've got it, that's it. They're not getting away from it, are they? You know, they would probably use the argument that perhaps a serious crime could be committed by somebody who's on this, and that's their argument, and it's really nuts, isn't it? They should do what they're supposed to do, but they don't. They hang on to the data and the biometric data, and people probably don't even are unaware of what data, biometric data, the police have on them.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, what they've got is it's not a fingerprint. So the way that the system works is you present your finger to a fingerprint scanner, and the scanner looks at the important points on your fingerprint, like the whoops and the swirls, and it'll plot a little map from that. And from that map and whereabouts on the map those salient points of the fingerprint are, it'll create maybe a 40, 50 digit number string, an algorithm. So you have this algorithm which is not a perfect match to your fingerprint. It'll be a parameter within, I don't know, maybe 5%, say. So any algorithms that sort of match your algorithm within a certain parameter could suggest it's you. So you might have a fingerprint that might throw up, depending on how big the database, 10 possible candidates whose fingerprint it is. And of course, in a court of law, you can get convicted on a crime on as little as, I think, less than a quarter of a proper fingerprint. So one wonders if less than a quarter of a 40 or 50 digit number is enough to secure a conviction on an algorithm. So it's not a perfect technology by any ways or means. And of course, fingerprint images are a lot harder to transfer between security agencies than a 50-digit number string. It's a lot easier to transfer data in that sort of format than it is in a fingerprint image. So once you're on the police, I think it's the Ident1 national database, the fingerprint and DNA one, that potentially could go to Europol, Interpol. You don't know, you don't have no idea at that point where your data's gone, which is why if you are at the beginning of your life in a school, giving up your biometric data at this point in your, if you've got sort of another 60 years to live, who knows the applications of biometric data in even the next 10 years. So absolutely, definitely better to have a PIN or a swipe card or some other sort of identification. I would strongly recommend not to give up a fingerprint for mundane daily purposes in school. It's bonkers.
That's just going off that, Pippa. Where I work, we had to give our biometrics, and out of between 400 to 500 staff, there was only me, and I was the last staff member to give me biometrics. But there was only me that asked for the terms and conditions. Was it a standalone system? Who had access to it? Is there any provisions that you're going to sell any of this data on? Blah blah blah. And I got it in black and white that it was a standalone system, that it was only to be used for inside the establishment. Now, that's one thing that obviously that can always be changed. That I couldn't guarantee that, but the factor was that despite, I've been classed at that point. I was classed as the nutter at work, if you know what I mean. But
what you mean.
And there was only me that asked those questions. But when I was asking the questions, and people were saying, "Well, why are you asking this?" And I went through everything. I said, "Yeah, but it's a good thing. It's easier." And they went, "But that's what it's promoted as." And now what they're saying is you can't work here unless you do that. And
Really?
Do you know what, Pippa? People had PIN numbers. I can still use a PIN number now, but they wanted the biometrics, and because of my suspicious nature, I had to ask all these questions. But it was the same as my mates. kids was going to school and they're wanting fingerprints and saying, no way is that happening. So they're getting cheeky, but there's so many people so fast asleep, Pippa, they just don't even think about it. You know, the contactless stuff, people always say, oh, is it contactless? You can't. No. Well, why not? It's so much easier. I said, because I know people who've made up to £300 to £400 just walking through a pub, just by bleeping near your handbag and near your wallet. So that's why. I said, people don't think, do they?
No. Not at all. I mean, the thing is that I know a couple of teachers that work in secondary schools, and they've implemented biometric fingerprint systems. And the children in the school have got the right to say no. I mean, ultimately, it's the child's decision. Even if the parents both said, we're okay with it, and the child didn't want to, the non-consent overrides the consent. And she was in a position where she'd objected to it, and it was slowly dawning on her that the kids had more rights than she did as an adult. Now, why can't those rights of children be extended to adults? I don't understand. It's almost discriminating. It's an age discrimination thing that adults haven't got the same rights that children have in school. And actually, arguably, children are less in a situation to make a decision on stuff like that because of their age, you know, apart from anything else. And adults have got probably can make a more informed consent or non-consent than children can. Yet the law's in the children's favour, which is great, but the same right needs to be extended to the rest of the adult population. But of course, the biometric system, for it to work, has to have as near 100% take-up as possible. Otherwise, you're running two separate systems side by side, and that doesn't make sense financially or administratively. So it doesn't surprise me that you've been forced to do that. And I've met other adults as well that have been in similar positions working for local councils or NHS that have had to do the same thing.
Yeah, but for me, Pippa, I mean, it does sound a great idea in principle that you give the children the overriding consent on this issue. But from my experience, children who are attending a school, particularly a state school, they're going to be very, very heavily pushed into being fully compliant at all times. So, yes, on the face of it, it appears they're being given this choice, this opt-out, where in reality, they're going to be pressured like hell to go along with the majority, aren't they?
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. They have, and especially at the point where children are going from primary school into a secondary school that are using biometric. Quite often, enrollment, they're told there and then to put their fingerprint on the scanner without even having an inkling of talking to their parents about consent. Had children told at enrollment that if they don't get fingerprinted, they're not allowed in the canteen to sit with their friends. There was one person at secondary school in London who had his mum and dad hadn't consented and he hadn't consented, and he got made to stand in the fingerprint scanner line, and when he actually physically refused to put his thumb on the scanner, they stuck him in isolation for 2 days, and when he was absolutely within his right to do so. And I'd sort of somebody had been in touch with me to tell me the story, and I got in touch with the mum and I said, the very least you're going to do is get an apology from the school, right? And she went, oh no, I don't want to rock the boat. And this is it. A lot of people don't want to stick their head above the parapet. I mean, I did at my children's primary school, and it wasn't pleasant. You know, I got sent to Coventry by a lot of the teachers. I'd seriously been told, the teachers have been told not to come anywhere near me, and that's really not a very nice situation when you've got your children in the care of these people. And I'm sure everything was fine with them, but it just isn't pleasant. And I can fully understand children and parents not wanting to say no, because schools have invested money in these systems, and like I say, you know, if it's going to be efficient and giving a return of investment, I suppose you need to have a near 100% take-up as possible. But it is, I do think rights should be extended to the rest of the population and not just to children under 18.
It depends what the agenda is, isn't it? When they're saying that for cost effectiveness. What actually is it you want from this? What are you, you know, what's the ultimate? Because getting your dinner with your fingerprint is one thing. Yes, that's a nice little bit of fun for the kids, but there's more to it. There has to be. to spend all that money on that technology when you could turn up with a couple of quid.
Well, you can turn up with a PIN number. I mean, schools sort of say, well, people forget PIN numbers. I'm a parent. Never, ever have I ever had a conversation with another parent where we've gone, oh, God, so-and-so's got his PIN number for the phone. If they can't remember a 4-digit PIN number, you have no chance of teaching them how to pass a GCSE. So that's absolutely rubbish. Of course they can use PIN numbers. And we worked a lot with No to ID sort of 10 years back, lobbying Parliament, because they saw the introduction of biometrics in schools as a means to soften up the next generation for biometric identity cards. So they then didn't know 10 years ago that they were going to win and the Labour government wasn't going to introduce national biometric identity card. But their argument was, well, they wouldn't need to because, pardon me, in 10 years' time, you'll have the next generation of people that will just go, yeah, there you go, there's my thumbprint. Because they've been normalised to it in school. So I think there is a desensitisation programme, definitely. Because it's an inappropriate, completely unproportionate amount of data to give to get a school meal. And I think as well, the interesting thing is, one of the problems I had with it was that it was giving my kids at a very young age the message that it's okay to give your fingerprint to somebody and then they'll feed you, or you have to give your fingerprint to somebody and then they'll give you knowledge in the form of a book, or you have to give your fingerprint to somebody and we'll open this door for you. That is a message I didn't want my kids to have at all, because that's not correct.
It's a bit like Pavlov's dog, isn't it? Give your fingerprints and you know you're going to get rewarded. Yeah, it's look, going on about the new generations, the millennials that you've got now. I find that I can't have conversations with a lot of the younger generations these days because they only speak in sound bites. And you've got the Americans. Some of these kids are now coming up for voting age, and if they're not eating Tide Pods, cleaning, washing powder tablets, they're snorting condoms up the nose and regurgitating it out through the mouth, and you pulling it. And these people are going to be voting soon. These are the generations that we've got coming through, and these are the ones who are going, oh, I'll give my fingerprints, I don't mind that, I'll do this. They've definitely softened them up, and I always look to America, like 8 to 10 years later, after America sneezes, we always catch the cold, so I think it's definitely being ramped up here, Pippa.
We actually were leading in this 10 years ago. We were the only using fingerprintation, and then America sort of caught on. So, yeah, I was losing you a little earlier, saying that unusually, in this particular circumstance, we were the first country in the world to biometrics into the education system, and then America followed maybe about 4 years. And they had the same issues with parents and privacy and civil liberties over there. They did manage to get, I think, 4 or 5 states to pass law state level to get consent for children. And in Florida, in 2013, I think it was, if I'm right, they actually banned the use of biometrics in schools. And I worked with one of the senators there, which was really interesting, watching the legislation go through that particular process, and also sort of seeing it go through the process with the Protection of Freedoms Act. So, and I'm not at all qualified in law or biometric technology, but I've sort of made it my business to know about these processes. Because if you don't, I mean, if I hadn't have done it, then I guess, well, it wasn't just me. I mean, there were other parents as well, but, schools would still be scanning children's fingerprints without us being aware of it, really, or children knowing at least they had an option. So yes, it is worth making a pain in the arse of yourself. It's time consuming, but if you do it for long enough, you don't get put down. Or I think sometimes they'll think that you'll go away, but it took how many years? From 2006 to 2013 when the legislation was enacted. So what's that? 7 years.
It's what people have got to do. I mean, the stuff that I've been involved with, people always want proof and they want you to give evidence. Can you tell us how to do this? Show me. Well, no, you can't. And then you get, well, I'm only one person. What can one person do?
a lot.
That person has got to do something, because the old adage is that if for evil or for this agenda to persist, all it takes is good people to do nothing. And if you just do one thing, if you ask questions, I'm not on about going challenging everything, but ask questions about something that's pertinent. Don't think that you've got to be polite. I think over here we've still got that crutch that we lean on, that we've got to be polite, we can't be, obstinate or anything like that. I think people have just got to grow up and take a bit of responsibility for themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I hadn't sent any freedom of information requests ever. In fact, I didn't even know we could do that.
Yeah.
Before
somebody's put in one of the chat rooms has put that when America sneezes, we catch the condom. Yeah, where does it all end, though, Pippa? I mean, we've got now they're doing everything and anything and everything to get our children's biometric data. Where does it all end? What's the last point? Where do they say, right, we've got enough biometric data upon that person to be able to track them throughout their lives? We know what we know what diseases they're likely to get in later life, because we're allowed to do that because we've got this information. It's from genetics. Where does it all end?
Well, potentially it doesn't, because of the onset of machine learning, artificial intelligence, the rate at which we can process data. I sort of looking at this sort of on a larger scale. I do look at the amount of data that's collected on children in schools, alongside another mum who's brilliant, called Jen Pearson. She has a website called Defend Digital Me. In 2012, the government, in its wisdom, decided to open the National Pupil Database. So we have a National Pupil Database in this country that's the richest data set of children globally. We've been collecting data from schools in the form of a school census since the early 1990s, and this got changed into a national pupil database around about the year 2000, and in 2012 the government decided it would be good to open it up for research. And when this happened, I was sort of aware it was going to happen, but I was still sort of looking at biometrics and RFID in education, radio frequency tags that were used in education. So I sort of said to Jen, you go away, you go and make yourself a big pain and set up a website and send some freedom of information requests. So she did, and she says data with children. So what I'm sort of getting around to doing is that children in schools are the most data mined section of the population, and the educational tech industry will say that. And with quite a lot of glee, because the amount of virtual learning platforms or the apps that children use in schools now can give so much data about a child. So, for example, if there's there's something called My Maths that children can do their maths homework on, so they log on at home and they can go and do their maths homework. So My Maths will potentially, you'd have to speak to Jen about this, certainly, of logging how long it took to do the homework, b what time they logged on to do it, if they logged off, logged on, whether or not they spent longer on long multiplication, and from that analysis they can tell that child maybe does better on a Wednesday after school, or better on a Saturday morning. It's got a problem with long multiplication. So without even any interaction with a teacher, the machine is starting to learn an awful lot of data about that child, not just from the maths homework, but the time it takes for them to do it, when they do it, and the step they took that one step further. Okay, these virtual learning platforms are great, but how do we know it's that child doing the homework and not their older sister or the best mate?
Yeah, well, we don't know that, do we?
So they thought it would be a good idea to...
Well, but, you keep breaking up, Pippa.
Right. Sorry, no, everybody else seems to be fine. biometrics in schools is to be verify work that's on the computer, basically. So the machine knows it is that particular citizen that's completing the work.
Yeah. You just break it up a little bit, and we missed a lot of that. A lot of what you were just saying. We were talking about kids doing homework and things like that, and logging on to their accounts online and doing their own work and stuff like that. And like you said, we don't know whether it's them that's actually doing it, do it? So it could be anybody doing their own work. So it just seems that it seems to be overkill on the kids at the moment, doesn't it? The amount of data that they want on kids, and those seem to be the target, particularly because they're going to be the people that are going to be spending the money in a few years' time. Okay.
Have we lost Pippa?
I think we've lost Pippa. Andy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Pippa's still on the call. So here she is. Hello.
Hello, Pippa.
Yeah.
Okay, we seem to have lost you, Pippa.
Hello.
Yeah, you're back now, Pippa.
Hi. I was just making a point. Are you still there, Pippa? Can you hear us? All right, I think we're probably going to have to fix the call and get another and call again and see if we can sort that out. Andy, I don't know if you're able to do that.
Yeah, we'll drop the call and restart it. We shouldn't be many seconds, so I won't bother putting the tune on. I'll just wait for everybody else to drop off the call. Right, they're still on the call. Right, there we go. Call restarted, so we should have Pippa back with us, and hopefully it'll be better. Sorry about this, folks. You know what a pain Skype can be sometimes, but tonight we're really up against it. We seem to be struggling with Pippa. She's it's still ringing. Paul's back, Jason's back, and Pippa's still ringing.
Very interesting what she was saying though about the biometric data and the way that they're mining it from children at the moment. What do you reckon, Paul?
I think it's the easiest place to start off, isn't it? Because even though I was saying about adults are quite blasé about it, the people who I know who had to give biometrics up, but I think making it a bit exciting, for children and making it cool and stuff like that. Well, they're going to then indoctrinate their children by saying, well, it was no big issue, was it? No big deal. So this is what they do. They only need a couple of generations to actually get whatever agenda it is that they want to put out there.
I think we've got Pippa back now, guys. You there, Pip? Maybe
Perhaps
not. Maybe not.
Would you like me to send my video?
Yeah, we've got you now.
Yeah.
You might be better, Pippa, if you leave your camera off.
I'm just thinking that I can. The audio is better if I do that.
Yeah, that's probably better. Unfortunately, Facebook Live, we're doing our best, but it's going to be a bit of a nightmare audio-wise. So we're going to have to switch the cameras off, and you'll have to make it do with looking at Jason's cool picture.
Oh, Jason.
Oh, Jason.
There you go.
Right, you're back with us now, Pippa.
Hello.
Oh, mind-boggling radio, ladies and gentlemen. You listen to Raconteurs News. We've got Pippa King on the line. We've got a bit of a problem with her and her Skype connection. At the moment, we're trying to get that sorted as soon as we possibly can. Any news, Andy?
Yeah, I'm hoping that Pip should be back online now.
I'm still here.
Oh, great. Okay.
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here. My Wi-Fi has gone a little bit. It's sort of up and down at the moment, so that might be me that's causing problems. Apologies for that.
No worries. It does sound a bit better now we've got your camera off. So yeah.
So where did we get up to, Jason? Because I can't think where we were up to when she got cut off. Where were we up to, Pippa?
No, I'm not hearing anything.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah, be back again in a little bit. Sorry.
Whereabouts are you anyway? Are you in out?
Sorry, what were you saying? No, I'm in London.
Oh right, okay, London.
London.
They're London, big smoke.
What you were touching on earlier, Jason, was you said, where does this stop? Where does it go? Well, if we're only talking about, you've got things like RFIDs that they've been. Sorry.
No, nobody said out, mate. Go on.
Oh, sorry. So something cut off. So you've got your RFID chips, and they're being promoted as it's a bit like chipping the dog. You can get your child to carry this RFID chip, which is then going to be put into the skin. It's like a bit tiptoe, isn't it? There seems to be tiptoeing us through all this technology, and it seems with the transhumanist type stuff where they're on about linking humans to computers and consciousness. It seems that is where this ultimate agenda is eventually going, and that will be the ultimate control grid, won't it?
Well, yes. I mean, I've seen some adverts popping up on my news feed where you can put these devices on your head that relaxes you, makes you sleep better, and certainly they're available to some schools. I saw some advertising going down that route to help children that have had ADHD heads, like a little headband.
Oh, Pippa, we just keep getting you blocked off every point, don't we? Yeah. Same for you guys.
I wonder if Pippa could perhaps just get a little bit closer to a microphone. That might just help her. She's gone. What can you do? She's in a third world country. She's in London.
She could do with going nearer the Wi-Fi router, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's probably on the third floor in the next building.
It is a bit unfortunate, but it's like today is like a tale of woe. I've lost a slipper, so I'm sat here with one slipper on.
Hey, so, ask Watson. Watson will know where that fucker is.
I know, but Watson, wait, tell me. And he's bit me on lip, the little git.
Don't know what you do with your face down there, mate.
Oh well. He's a good doggy. Little puppy. We're talking about my puppy Watson. We are trying to reconnect with Pippa King. Here on Raconteurs News, we're talking about biometrics and what they're doing to our children and all different sorts of things. And while we're doing that, have we got something lined up for next week, Paul?
Hello.
We got Pippa back. Yeah, Pippa, we always have trouble with anyone who's in a third world country, and let's face it, you're in London. Hard luck, girl.
No, it's not too bad down here. Nice, it's warmer than Yorkshire.
Well, funny enough, the time before we spoke to Max Egan, he was out in the jungle in the middle of Peru, and we didn't have a problem.
Bizarre.
Yeah, you're slap bang in the middle of the centre of the universe, allegedly, and can't get a Wi-Fi signal.
Well, it's a lot stronger, so that's good. So this probably was me, so I do apologise.
No worries, mate. No worries.
So yeah, we were just talking about the data collection in schools, and I think Paul was sort of saying, where does it stop? And unfortunately, I don't think it will, because at no point in time is anybody going to say, oh, data, that's not worth any money. That's not worth it. We'll stop at this point. It's not going to stop. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse until a situation happens when maybe it will stop. I don't know, but I can't foresee that in the near or distant future, given the way that we're going as a society.
Will people in future? Will people have secrets? Something that's secret, something that's sacred that nobody else knows. I mean, I think this is where I think it's going. You know, nobody will have any secrets. I've got a. Well, let's say it wouldn't be a secret now, but I've got a disorder, a blood disorder, which would mean that there's no chance I'd get any life insurance or anything. So you know, back in the day, that wouldn't have happened. I would have just got the life insurance, and you know, it would have been, they would have paid out, perhaps, maybe, upon my death. But you know, where does it? Can you see that? Is anybody going to have any sort of secrets like that anymore? Or you know, are we going to a place where we're just giving up everything, every little thing about us? Nothing's sacred, nothing's secret, nothing's personal.
I think the potential for us to give that sort of information up without us knowing about it is there, you know, which is why I've sort of been looking at the police use of covert, essentially facial recognition technology that they've been using in the UK now since 2014, without really people knowing anything about it. So you can unwittingly give up all sorts of data about yourself without sort of being aware. You know, even if you walked around without your phone on, and you'd still get picked up on a camera or an ANPR license plate camera somewhere. So I don't know where it's going to stop, but it is one of the reasons why I sort of wanted to come on and have a chat to you guys was because I have been looking quite a lot at facial recognition, and I've sort of been quite quiet on the internet about this because I've been working with some of the privacy organisations in London, trying to get questions raised in Parliament. I mean, whatever view you might have of our point, I have been through it. Yes, it took me 7 years, and it sort of worked. So we're trying to get some sort of debate and discussion going in Parliament, and then hopefully with the wider public, about the police's use of facial recognition, because they're just using it and nobody knows about it, basically, which is outrageous, because you can, like say, give up the sort of data about how you're feeling, where you are, who you're with, what time of day you're there, and the Home Office's sort of take on facial recognition is that it's less invasive than a fingerprint or DNA, which is rubbish, because a fingerprint can't give the detail of when you were there or who you were with or how you were feeling, but a facial image or facial video can give the police data of the time of day you were there, who you were with, certain emotions, you know, that you've got on your face. You know, that you can give a whole lot more than a fingerprint or a DNA sample can. So because they argue that it's not invasive as a fingerprint or DNA, it's a rubbish argument. So they're sort of trying not to class a facial image as a biometric marker, which of course it is, because your facial image is measured in exactly the same way a fingerprint is measured. So the system looks at the salient points, the space between your eyes and nose and mouth, measures it, creates a number string, an algorithm, and then compares that to other faces. So, for example, the way the police use it in a live scenario is they'll have CCTV cameras running on an event, and they will have a reference facial image database. And so the system is scanning the crowd, measuring faces, and then comparing that in real time to the reference image database they've got. And it will pop up possibilities, because like I said earlier, it's not an exact match. There'll be a certain parameter, a percentage of the number string that will say this is a possibility, this might be so and so, and then it'll throw up the possibilities. And so that's what the police have been using. But I have to say, without sort of creating any sort of alarm, it's not a nationwide thing. So we've only got 3 police forces that are using it only. So we've got about, I think, 48 different police forces in the UK, and we've got the Metropolitan Police, South Wales Police and Leicestershire Police that have run a real-time facial scanning system on crowds at different events. So, and I actually, I bizarrely found myself invited to the Met Police's use of facial recognition at the 2017 Notting Hill Carnival, because I'd done so much work on it, and then working with a couple of privacy organisations in London, and they got an invite to go to sort of see the facial recognition suite in action, as it were, because really they've not been doing the work on biometrics that I did. They sort of got in touch with me and said, would I go down and have a look and sort of not explain what was happening, but sort of somebody with a pair of eyes that sort of knew what was happening because of the use of facial recognition in schools way back in 2008 and 7. I sort of had a knowledge of how the system worked. So yeah, on that bank holiday Monday, I was at Notting Hill Carnival in a police van watching this facial recognition system live, which was very surreal, really. And it was interesting because the police could do nothing but sort of wax lyrical about the technology, whereas the sort of 5 or 6 of us that were there saying, yeah, but it's not very good on darker skinned people, because obviously the face is harder to measure, because the points, the shadows, aren't as defined, because the skin's of a different colour. It's not as light as ours, which is easier to measure. And so it's racially biased, the system anyway. So it's going to throw up more false positives for people of a darker skin than it is for people of a lighter skin. So you're automatically.
So even facial recognition is racist. Everything is racist.
I mean, it's just a flawed technology. Thank goodness. But what's happening is the particular company that's supplying the Met Police in South Wales and Leicestershire, which is all the same company, which is a company called NEC. It's a Japanese company, are sort of, I don't know the finances of it, but the police were saying, we're only trialling it, we're not actually using it, because NEC's algorithms need refining, basically. They know it's a flawed technology, it's not good enough to run perhaps as a commercially viable operation, so we're testing it for them. To put it bluntly, we're testing it for them. So again, the UK population is being used, as were the children in primary schools, to refine the biometric technology so it can be sort of rolled out. But having said that, even though they say they're only trialling it, they're still making operational decisions based on the results of the facial recognition. I mean, ultimately, the system will throw up a possibility that this could be X, Y, and Z, and then the police and the operational facial recognition suite vehicle then sort of radio down the line to Constable Smith, whoever it is, to say, you've possibly got so-and-so coming to you this way, here's his mugshot, can you check? So the ultimate decision is made by a human. But, give it 5 or 10 years and that human-making decision will be out of the equation. I can virtually guarantee that, because some of the facial recognition systems that have been developed in China are more accurate at recognising faces than humans are. So we'll become a sort of secondary player in that sort of process.
Yeah, if we could just backtrack for a moment, Pippa. I don't know whether it was lost when Skype was breaking up a little bit there, but John Hall is just asking, can Pippa give the full address of her friend's webpage, Defend Digital Me, please?
Yes, I think it is defenddigitalme.org, but Defend Digital Me, all one word in lowercase, obviously. But if he types it in to a search engine, her webpage should come up. I'll try and see if I can get that while I'm Skyping without trying to.
It's okay. I'll do it, Pippa. No worries.
Okay, thanks. But yes, her webpage is great. So please go and have a look. She's great, and she's just another mum, that got really concerned about her children's data being transferred in an unencrypted form to a third party. I mean, there are more details on that on her website, but to be brief, it's gone to educational tech companies for commercial purposes. Children's data has gone in raw form to BBC, Times journalists. It's bonkers, because if you are a researcher and you want to research NHS data, for example, you have to go to a data centre, government data centre and they will put you in a little room in a booth with just literally a pen and paper so you can make notes. But children's information, no, they'll send that out unencrypted, in mass raw data form to journalists. And it's just, and she's actually trying to raise some money to mount a legal challenge to the Department of Education of them doing this. So, but the details are all there on her website. She'd be a better person to speak to about that than me. But and again, it's one person has done something, and she's made a big difference. So it is worth, if you've got the time, certainly the inclination to hold these people to account, basically.
Yeah, well, I've just done that search, and it turns out it looks like the website's defenddigitalme.com. But I've just had a great message, and I remember we were talking about this the other night, from Dinny over in Germany. I mean, fantastic, the international audience we've got here. I see on the website tonight we've got people listening in all over the UK. There's the Isle of Man. There's Dinny in Germany. There's, I think, Owen's listening from Portugal, and one or two more. So, but Dinny has said in China they use facial recognition in public toilets, so you only get 4 sheets of toilet paper. I kid you not.
No, he's right. they do, or they have done. I don't know whether they're still doing it. That was from about a year ago, I think. No, he's absolutely spot on. It's crazy. I mean, China and the Alibaba system they've got there is, and it's been said on other radio programs, it's just like an episode out of Black Mirror, and they're using it extensively to scan crowds, to scan people for jaywalking. If you want an indication of where we could go, have a look at China. But we are going, basically. Well,
I'm really pleased you raised Black Mirror there, Pippa, because when we saw that first ever episode of Black Mirror, it was hilarious, and we thought, yeah, that would be really funny if it ever really happened. And then it came so very close to coming true with David Cameron and the Pig's Head, and there's so much stuff I've seen, and I'm thinking, shit, that was an episode of Black Mirror. Now, Charlie Brooker strenuously denies that he's been fed any advance information of what's coming up in the world, but the more and more you see, I mean, okay, he's a writer, he's got an imagination, and you can see where some of this is going, but he does seem to be so spot on, it's quite freaky, isn't it?
Yeah, I was particularly thinking of the one where you had to give each other social credits.
Oh, 50,000 credits, yes.
Yeah, yes. And there was also one about...
is there not a system in place in China at the moment where that is, you get social credits, and if you don't get enough social credits, there's a restriction on your movement and your travel and all that sort of thing? Isn't there already a system in place in China, apparently?
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually up and running, but that's something they're looking at. So if your so social credits aren't high enough, then you don't get first dibs on either first class or even train tickets or aeroplane tickets. So you have to. It encourages people to interact with the system, obviously, in order to operate within society. And if you don't, interact with the system, then your rights within society become less and less. And so there isn't really then an option to opt out. You have to either participate in the system or you're not able to participate in society, and that is really dangerous. I mean, at the moment, we have got the option to opt out of biometrics in schools. We haven't particularly got the option to opt out of a facial recognition scanning system, because we're not always going to be aware that it's up and running. The police are meant to make people aware that if they're at an event and they're running facial recognition, they should let you know. But that could be in the form of a sign pasted on a van, but by the time you've seen the police van with a CCTV camera on top, it's too late. You've already been facially recognised. Or it's given out in the form of leaflets, again, handed out near the van. So you have no option. And we sort of raised this with the Met Police when we went to Notting Hill Carnival last year, and they said, well, if we told everybody we were doing it, then all the bad guys would go in another entrance. Like, yeah, but they wouldn't just... So they've got no option, really, in their eyes, just to do it as covertly as they can, but make a a sort of little gesture of it being, oh, well, we are telling, members of the public, and they're not. And this is the whole, I mean, there's no independent oversight. There's been no discussion. The police are using it sort of in a live scenario. So there's 3 instances, or the 3 different types of facial recognition the police are using as one in a live scenario at an event, a pop concert, Notting Hill Carnival, Remembrance Day Sunday, those sort of events. So the second option they can use facial recognition is on a custody suite photograph, where they get a static image from a CCTV camera or a body-worn camera or social media, and they will run that facial image through a big set of custody suite photographs. So that's called a static facial image sort of system. And then the third type of facial image system they have would be like a post-video analytical system. So, for example, there's a company called Sequester, Sequuestor, so please search Sequester. This company can, or it purports to make dumb CCTV smart. So it amalgamates different CCTV videos from private businesses, corporate spaces, public spaces, police CCTV, and puts it into one big database of the same format, and then it will run post video or face analytics, facial recognition, facial detection across that, so they can start to track a person's movements around a city. It'll use ANPR, the automatic number plate registration sort of technology. And to me, even though live facial recognition is dangerous because you can get picked up there and then and stop from doing what you're doing, but the post-analytical video facial recognition is probably more invasive because there's a lot more of it, and it's not particularly live in the field, so they haven't got that we've got to make a split decision now sort of thing. They can start to profile, so they can look at who you're associating with, really look at your emotions on the day, track your movements, which a static camera in and out of an event at the moment can't do if it's running live. But if you've got a lot of video footage from a lot of different CCTV systems, that to me is probably more dangerous in the long term. Well, I don't know. How can you classify how dangerous something is, or how?
So what you're saying is that what they can do is in a few seconds is they can recognise you in the street. You're using facial recognition. They know who you are, and within minutes they can know how you're feeling that day because of what you might have posted on social media, or how you're feeling that day based upon your facial expression and what sort of mood you're in. And it's like you say, it is really, really creepy, isn't it?
It's incredibly invasive, and this discussion isn't being had really because nobody knows it's going on. There's no knowledge really. Like I say, if you do happen to stumble across a facial recognition unit in Wales, London, or Leicestershire, it's too late. You're on the system. You haven't had an option to opt out. So it's the whole thing's a nonsense. And because much like the biometrics in schools, we started fingerprinting children in schools in 2001, and legislation became enacted in 2013. That was 12 years. And by the time we'd got that legislation through Parliament, it was, it's like trying to shut the stable door after the horse had bolted. And they're doing the exact same MO now with us. They're introducing it, doing what they want with it, and then they're asking questions later and apologising for it later. And by the time any sort of legislation has gone through, or any sort of statutory regulation, it's going to be too late. The police are going to have rolled it out so extensively that, much like biometrics in schools, it's there. And it's stupid because the events they're rolling it out on, they're not high crime events. We're talking about Remembrance Sunday at the Cenotaph. They had a database of 42 people from the risk assessment. I forget it off the top of my head. It's where
units were daft in it.
Yes, that's right. It's something to the Met Police and the NHS have a database of people, assessed threat unit, something like that, of people that haven't done anything wrong, that might possibly be bordering on having a mental health problem, but are deemed a risk or a threat to somebody. So they took 42 of the images from the threat database from the NHS and decided to scan everybody at the Remembrance Sunday service in London last November to see if any of those people were there. Now, as far as I can recall, at that event, certainly there's been no marked incident where anybody's posed a threat to anybody, or certainly nothing that's hit the newspapers or media. So the reasoning behind them running that sort of technology there, to me, is nonsensical, because it's not an event where anything of high risk is going to happen. Again, at Notting Hill Carnival, what's the worst that can happen there? They'll maybe get somebody for doing drugs, perhaps, but it's not like it's a big violent event. People go there to enjoy themselves. Leicester Police used it at Download Music Festival, and 110,000 partygoers, and their excuse was that they wanted to clamp down on mobile telephone theft and the sale of legal highs. Well, the sale of legal highs is legal. There's clues in the name. And if you don't want your mobile phone, it's hardly a high-level crime, is it, having a mobile phone nicked? And, just keep it safe. So the reasons they're introducing this technology are completely spurious, and that it's just an excuse to test it to see how effective it is.
So we're all guinea pigs, aren't we? Really, in this test, and will be the result of whatever happens. Will be down to us. Listen, we are talking to Pippa King. It's Jason, Andy, and Webby as well. We are on Raconteurs News on this Tuesday night. We've got Pippa King as our guest. It's about an hour's. We're an hour in, so what we're going to do is have a little bit of a break. Go to the toilet and do all the things. Go and powder our noses. I think that's the polite way of saying it. Well, we're going to have a bit of a break. So Andy's going to play a couple of records, and we'll be back in the second hour with Pippa King, our guest. We're talking facial recognition and the dangers and everything.
Well, just before I play them, Jason, I've got to say that I'm pleased Heath's listening tonight, because I've lined up one specially for him. He mentioned it the other day on Skype. But before that, we've got a strange ghostly voice coming in.
My name is Stephen Hawking, and I used to listen to Raconteurs News.
Dream from the heart comes free. Ow.
And welcome back to Raconteurs News. It's Tuesday and we've got Pippa King with us, joining us. Myself, Andy and Paul, we've got Pippa King. We've been talking about biometrics, we've been talking about facial recognition. What we've not been talking about is how drunk I was last night and what a mess I made of the show last night. So I do apologise for that to everybody, once again, unreservedly. I'm absolutely... I'm absolutely humble in my apologies. So I think we'll probably draw a line under that now and hopefully move on in future. So anyway, Pippa, how are you doing? Did you enjoy your little break that we had there?
Yes, thank you very much. I did. It's very nice.
Awesome. What about you, Andy? Did you enjoy the break?
I enjoyed the break. I had a nice little chat with Paul, and I had a little wee. All peachy, mate.
A little wee. Awesome. Well, what about you, Paul?
Well, I wasn't aware of Andy's little wee, but yes, it was quite a pleasant chat on Facebook. Pippa's decided where she needs to go next with the facial recognition and bring it into the council, so I'm looking forward to hearing this bit.
In that case, I think that's what we should do then. Pippa, take it away. What's the next the next port that we're going to call on this particular show?
So, facial recognition. So we've spoken about how obviously schools have been using biometrics and a little bit of facial recognition, but mainly fingerprint biometrics since 2001. And the police, the Met Police, Leicestershire Police, South Wales Police have been using it in a live scenario at different events. Every single police force uses static facial recognition, so they will take a photograph from CCTV or body-worn cameras and run it across the PND, which is Police National Database, which has all the custody suite photos on from all the police forces in the UK, to see if there's a person of interest that's on there. But what we haven't touched upon is the way or how local councils are looking to put facial recognition behind public space CCTV. So at events, when the police have been running it live, they've had a van with a little camera on top, and they've been scanning crowds via sort of mobile cameras. But we have Glasgow City Council that have got 70 of their public space CCTV cameras. They have something called suspect search that has been lying behind 70 of those 400 public space cameras they've got in the city of Glasgow, which is supplied by a company called NICE. Now, NICE are an Israeli securities company, and Glasgow City Council bought this system in 2013 as part of the Smart Cities programme. They're the UK's first official smart city. So this will probably overlap a little bit with what Mark Steele was talking about with you the other week.
Yeah.
About the smart agenda. But Glasgow City Council have got the potential to make suspect search operational. They sort of say, if you go to their Open Glasgow YouTube channel, there's sort of tiny snippets about suspect search on there, though they won't reference to it as suspect search. They'll sort of say they have a particular video where there's a little girl that's gone missing with blue wellies and a yellow coat on, and they can program the biometric detection facility on the CCTV cameras, not just to facially recognise somebody, but to look at the clothes that they're wearing. So if you had a person of interest that had a particular type of coat on or a hat, the CCTV can pick that up. So it's not just about facially recognising somebody and saying this is John Smith. It's that the police can say we want to look for somebody that probably looks like this, and give the system a face, but also sort of type in the different colours of the clothes that they're wearing and that sort of thing. And that can, if you go to YouTube and type in NICE suspect search, there's a good sort of 3-minute promotional video run by NICE that'll give you an idea of what the system is in Glasgow. Now, I've been sending Glasgow City Council freedom of information requests since 2014 on when they're going to make this operational, because there's no system operating like this at all in Europe. We'd be the first country, or Scotland would be the first country to deploy this type of tracking system. But they don't seem to be able to stupidly, or not stupidly, thankfully, they don't seem to be able to make the privacy impact assessment to fit the system they've got. So under the current Data Protection Act, if you want to use any sort of surveillance system or gather data on people, you have to fill in a privacy impact assessment. And that basically you have to justify the use of the surveillance that they're using. And there are sort of legal parameters which privacy impact assessments have to fall into, of which I'm not an expert, but there are. If you need to know about that, you can go to the Information Commissioner's website. So the Information Commissioner oversees the UK Data Protection Act. And they've been trying to make the privacy impact assessment fit the system now for nearly 4 years. And the only reason they've not made the biometric system that lies behind the CCTV cameras in Glasgow city centre operational is because it's not legal, basically. So they've managed to spend however many hundreds of thousands of pounds on what you call a soft biometric. So soft biometrics is where you're tracking people who walk in a certain manner, the clothes they're wearing. So you're not measuring their face or measuring a fingerprint as such. You're looking at a softer version of identifying people. So and so the last Freedom of Information request I sent Glasgow City Council was in February, and they said they expected to have the privacy impact assessment legally signed off by the end of May. They've been saying this now for the past nearly 4 years, so if they haven't been able to get it to legally fit by now, I don't think they will, which is a good thing, which sort of doesn't bode well for other councils that are looking to deploy similar operational systems. So West Yorkshire got a Home Office grant to use on public space CCTV and on the metro transport system that runs in West Yorkshire. So they're working with Bradford Metropolitan District Council, Calderdale Council, Kirklees Council, which is Huddersfield, Wakefield Council, Community Safety Partnership in Leeds. So you've got one of the biggest, I think it's fourth biggest police force in the UK, West Yorkshire Police, working within sort of 5 local authorities to be putting a very similar sort of facial detection stroke recognition system behind the transport system cameras on the buses and trains and the.
So people are being profiled not only for their race, but people. What you're talking about, this soft recognition system, as if we fucking believe that. Yeah. They're not doing that really, are they? But what they're doing is they're profiling people based upon what they're wearing, where they're going, what they're doing, and who they're with. It's really, really sinister, isn't it? It's really sinister and creepy.
Yeah, I mean, the system they've got in Glasgow can identify potential hotspots areas for crime and identify if somebody's hanging around there. So the system will say, oh, this is a potential hotspot, and we have a human being that's here that's hanging around, and he looks like this. And so the police can then track that human being. What it also has the potential to do is to give police, say if there was an event in Glasgow, an ideal opportunity to kettle people, because the system will be able to recognise where the crowds are, perhaps predict the crowd movement, and look at where the crowds have been. And so, there's that potential for police to stop protests. Now, Edinburgh City Council, where Holyrood is, the Scottish Government we're looking at a similar system supplied by a company called CGI. So CGI are a Canadian company that have just got, probably about a year ago, got the contract to supply all Scottish authorities with IT equipment, and part of the IT equipment is the CCTV system, and part of the services that CGI offer is facial recognition or facial detection, the same sort of soft biometric system. And one of the local councillors in Edinburgh City Council just made no bones about it, and he said, we can track protesters, we can see who's coming in and out of the city. So, I mean, the clues in Glasgow City's purchase of the system, suspect search, and they'll say, oh no, we're only really going to use it to find little children and people with dementia. No, you're not. The clues in the title of the package that you've bought, you're tracking people who you suspect of stuff. Not that they've done anything. You're just using it to track people. You're profiling. I think
they might do something.
You what? Sorry.
So the profiling people it's sort of like a pre-crime profile. So
it's minority report
that might do something, yeah.
That's right. And Kent police are using a system called PredPol, which is based on Google Map data that has come over from the States. And they've had that system for quite a few years now. I have to say I don't know much about it. But if you listen to Kent police sort of on the use of this PredPol, predictive policing, I guess that's what it's short for, they'll say that, in certain areas it's brought the crime down, I haven't, to be honest, had a chance to look into that, but, that's this predictive policing alongside facial recognition and of course the post-analytical stuff, where they're storing video and then analysing it. I think Paul was sort of saying, when do we stop collecting the data? Well, the answer is we don't. There's going to be no stopping collecting of the data until we're, literally in a 1984 society. And interestingly enough, I read 1984. We read 1984 at school in 1984 when I was at secondary school, and I can remember thinking, God, this is just awful. You know, we had a discussion in class about, you know, how the society was. And I actually read it, I think, about 2 years ago. And it was a frightening reread. It was absolutely frightening, because I thought, this isn't, you know, it's a handbook, isn't it? And you can sort of, people say that all over social media, and it is a handbook. And that's potentially where we could be going with this sort of thing. But again, there's no, the way that the local authorities sell it to public is that it's there to help the most vulnerable in society, and it's a tool, isn't it? You know.
This is how everything seems to get promoted. I mean, you're just saying that this is being pioneered in Scotland. There's so much being pioneered around us at the minute, because Scotland also, I don't know if you've heard of it, Pippa, the named person scheme. Have you heard of that?
I certainly have. That sounds horrendous.
Yes.
That's not actually up and running, is it? Did they manage to...
What they're trying to implement is that every family, whether they've got issues in the family or not, will be allocated a social worker. Now, if you're then going to put on top of that facial recognition, you now can track people who have got issues with these social services. It's building more and more of a database for every man and woman and child.
Doesn't the named person scheme start from sort of conception almost, rather than birth?
Yes, it is. As soon as there's a family as soon as you want to start a family, you're going to be allocated this social worker, and they're going to take part in every decision that the family makes to ensure that you are good parents. Now, this is going to be introduced because, look at all the trouble that families have, and look at all the issues. Well, all these issues are actually have been socially engineered for the big part of it, and now we're being handed the remedy to it. So it's almost like we've got all these problems that are being engineered, and then all of a sudden, we've got a solution for this. People are that far behind things because they're distracted with things. You know, if it's not television, if it's not football, if it's not something like that, it's other things that they're distracted with, or they're just materials. It's like it's got to take something to give somebody a slap in the face. So a bit like yourself, Pippa, you know, it was knocking on your door, this stuff. Perhaps if it hadn't knocked on your door, you might not have even looked into it. I know some of the stuff I was involved with, I personally wouldn't have gone and hunted it out to do. But I think it's invading that many people's lives now. I think it's a case that people have got to just grow up a little bit and have a look at this stuff. Whether, you know, stop saying I don't believe this and your conspiracy theory that. Go and look for yourself instead of keep, you know, repeating sound bites.
Yeah, do you know, I think the biggest, and I know we're going slightly off topic here, but it's not, I suppose, but the biggest problem I have with the named person strategy that they're planning on doing or wanting to implement in Scotland is vaccinations and home education. So I took the decision, I mean, my children are now in their early 20s, but I took the decision in the late 90s not to vaccinate my children because I'd read, thank God for Nexus magazine. If nobody knows what Nexus magazine is, please have a look. I've been reading Nexus since, I think, Marcus Allen bought it over in the mid-1990s. So we chose not to vaccinate our children, which would probably be flagged up in a named person scheme. And also, my children went to primary school, and because of the campaigning and educating myself about the education system and the people and the players in it, we decided to home educate at the end of primary for the high school. So again, that sort of the named person scheme was in back then, or even, I suppose, thinking about it, if the level of social service activity was as prolific as it is now with interfering with families, sort of as it was, if it was that bad sort of in 2006, I might have thought twice, you know, about doing this and sticking my head above the parapet, because if you, I don't want to scare anybody off from being sort of a head above the parapet, but the implications of being a problem parent. Even back then, I had a parent that was in touch with me that had his child's school record had been marked with the fact that he was a problem parent because he had complained about a biometric system in a school in London. He'd then travelled to Scotland, the kid's pupil record had travelled with the child, and he gave the school that the child was going to a subject access request to see what data had come up from the school in London to the school in Scotland. And to his horror, one of the fields in this, the papers he got back was the fact that he was a problem parent, and this child had been marked with that. And so there are subjective comments that can go on these databases that you or your child has no knowledge about. It's presumptions, it's profiling, and that was sort of going on 10 years ago. So goodness knows what the capabilities of a named person scheme can be. And all this, I think, do take a look at Defend Digital Me. I've got a website called stateofsurveillance.blogspot.co.uk. There's quite a bit of stuff on there about facial recognition and something called millimeter microwave technology, which is something we haven't talked about, which is basically TSA style scanners. So at American airports you have these scanners that you can walk through, and it shows if you're wearing a gun-shaped object or you're carrying something on you. So Manchester Metropolitan University have developed a similar technology, but rather than have a doorway that you walk through, again, that you've got to participate with, they've developed it where it's sort of like a dinner-sized plate, handheld device. They can beam onto crowds, and that particular device will identify if somebody in that crowd is carrying a gun-shaped object or a potential suicide vest or a knife.
So that technology is it's like the same technology, maybe different frequencies as the microwave weapons that they use to disperse crowds, isn't it?
Well, it's not a dissimilar frequency. So the millimeter microwave technology they use with these scanners is supplied by a company called Radiophysics Solutions, who coincidentally are owned by the same investment company that Sequester, I was talking about earlier on, owned by. But anyway, that's another program. But so Radiophysics Solutions, their millimeter microwave scanners are working from 95 to 110 gigahertz frequency, which is really, really high microwave frequency. Yeah. So the active, I think it's an active denial system that DARPA had pioneered in the States was working at 98 gigahertz. So what this particular system is throwing out is it's called an ultra-wideband radio frequency. So it's a splash of frequencies between 98 and 110 gigahertz. So the faster the frequency, the more it'll bounce off something dense. The lesser the frequency, the more it'll penetrate something. Yeah. So you start to get a 3D image, which is how these things work, of what's in front of you. So you can use it for medical applications like looking in wombs and stuff like that, or you can fire it on crowds of people and see what they're carrying. And in the TSA
Xbox One as well, isn't it, Pippa? Xbox One uses it as well.
I have no clue. I don't have an Xbox.
It picks up your movements. There's games that you can play, and it picks up your movements within the living room. So therefore, it can map your living room, and it can map your house and everything.
Right. Okay. Yes. This technology. Well, I mean, this technology, these splash of ultra-wideband radio frequencies, can give such detailed data off where they're shining it on. For example, military use it to look inside buildings if you're in a combat situation to see if any enemy were in a building. So sensitive is this picture, this radio frequency picture it can give you in the form of a picture. It can tell whether somebody's breathing or not. And so they use it in earthquake scenarios to scan rubble. So a good use of the technology, yes, fine, use it in earthquake scenarios. Bad use of the technology, again, testing it on crowds in London. So if you go to my What Do They Know page on the What Do They Know website, which is just a website full of freedom of information requests, you can see the questions that I've asked the Home Office about their use of this radio frequency scanning system. And they have just refused to answer any of my questions on that due to national security and law enforcement issues, which they're entitled to do under the Freedom of Information Act. Yeah. So they're not denying it, and they are using it because it was in some blurb that the Mayor of London's office sort of put out a couple of years ago. So the potential. So what's happening with that particular technology is that They, as far as I know, are trialling it in London, but I have no other more details than that. If you want to see what these systems look like, go to State of Surveillance Blogspot website, because I've got some photos on there. And so if you see any of these scanners, then at least you know what they are. I would step out of the way, because God knows what a 98 to 110 gigahertz frequency is going to do to you, apart from anything else. So the particular company that's supplying these scanners is working with Sequester, who has just got a contract to do post-analytical facial recognition analysis on about 40 police forces videos. So you've got Sequester and Radio Physics Solutions. So potentially what they're looking to do, Sequester can't work in a real-time scenario. So it can only work on video that's post-event. What it's looking to do is to look at video that's in a real-time event, to hook up CCTV systems, separate CCTV systems, in real time turn it into one format and then scan it in a real time situation. So they are looking to work with Radio Physics Solutions, who operate the millimeter microwave scanners, so that you could have a potential where there's a crowd in London. The microwave scanner could scan the crowd. It would pick up a potential, this person we think here is carrying a gun. Sequester cameras would then focus on the person in question and then track that person. So you've got you've potentially got no human interaction at that point, but you have a system that can, and this will happen because this is being developed at the moment, that can scan crowds and pick up different shaped objects, and then this CCTV then takes over and follows the person. Now my big problem with this, the millimeter microwave technology, is health. Nobody has any idea what type of health implications, not just to us, but to insects or babies, children, those sort of frequencies have. And two is, where do you draw the line with this technology? Do you start fitting scanners to every lamppost? Do you point them inside people's houses? If it's such sensitive, military grade system that can pick up whether people are breathing or not, can you imagine the sort of data they can take from setting up an array of these antennas around a city? So this is where Mark Steele comes in, because this is sort of what's happening with the smart city agenda, and certainly to a certain point what's happening with the antenna network that's going up on lampposts in the UK. I'm not saying that they are going to scan inside houses. All I'm saying is that there's a potential to do so, and
that's it though, isn't it, Pippa? That's all that they need. It's the same with I know again we're going slightly off subject, but it is in subject in a lot of ways with chemtrails. I've read the House of Commons PDF on the regulations of geoengineering. Mm-hmm. Everything that they want to do is written in that legislation, but we're not going to use it. Well, you put it in the legislation, so you are going to use it at some point. And it's the same with these frequencies. You're right. They're not going to advertise it saying, oh yeah, we can look into your house and your living room. But we've interviewed an ex-copper, and I know ex-police myself, and they said that 20, 30 years ago they had to apply for a warrant to actually, if they wanted to tap your phone or anything. Now we buy things like Alexa off Amazon, and we ask them to wiretap us. Is this when they put these smart meters in with a smart TV, with a smart fridge, with a smart washer, and you've got all these other pieces of equipment that are outside, they're going to talk to these smart meters. Your smart appliances are going to talk. They're going to know what amount of energy that you're using. They're going to know when you come and go. So all this stuff that they're saying is promoting to make life easier, of course there's that potential, and that potential will be written into any legislation that comes along. And the terrorism stuff is the back door that they need. Apparently the fact that us three are here talking about this, we're classed as domestic terrorists. It's absolute bonkers, this world.
Well, it's interesting, because I've just sort of moved to London recently, and since January there's been a huge spate of knife crime and different shootings, and certainly with the terror attacks that happened last year and the year before with knives and guns, I was just thinking to myself, this is the problem. Reaction solution, famous David Icke saying. This is the problem presenting itself, and the solution has already been. They're already testing the solution. It's this millimeter microwave scanner.
Yeah.
So, when I was growing up in the 1970s, the IRA were awful terrorists. You know, they really knew how to create terror. They were putting nails in bombs and really doing some horrible things. This terrorism that we've got now is very soft, if that's the right word to use.
Well,
in comparison. But the terror that's created out of it because of the social media is a lot more. We didn't know anything about the IRA bombs until you sat down and watched the 9 o'clock news. You know, and the terror had sort of gone by that point, even though it was absolutely horrific what happened. But this sort of live terrorism, you know, seeing it in action on Twitter, creates this sort of tidal wave of emotion, and people sort of comment on it, and people seem a lot more terrorised by single knife attacks and gun attacks, as horrible as they are, because of the way that we now report stuff. And I think there's no bad thing in having things live, because also as well, it throws up anomalies that happen at these events. But I do think that the type of terrorism we're seeing in the form of knife and gun crime in the capital is a problem to a solution that's what they've already got.
Yeah, I agree. Go on, Andy, were you going to say something, pal?
I was, and it's gone clean out of me. Oh, yeah, sorry. I was going to say about the IRA. I just wanted to jump in there. Yes, they were very real terror events, but as we've come to learn later years with information that's leaked out and been declassified, they had an awful lot of help from MI5, it seems. You know, you look at domestic terror in the USA. You look back to the Oklahoma bombing. You look at 9/11. You look at all, and it does appear that I did see somewhere on some sort of report on domestic terror in the USA. They were saying at least 50% of all cases that are discovered, the plots foiled, etc. It's actually a patsy of very low intelligence that's been set up by the FBI, and they tell them, oh yeah, we'll give you all these dummy bombs and all that, it's just an exercise, and boom, they give them the real shit.
That happened at the first World Trade Center bombing. But was that 92 or 93?
93, wasn't it? Yeah.
93, yeah. And the fella got that suspicious. He recorded the last meeting where they actually gave him the real bomb. So if had he not recorded it, he would have gone down for all of that. So we've known all this. The false flags they've done it to their own people. In every walk of life through history, as far back as you want to go, these empires that always form, they end up crumbling from within. They're never beaten from the outside. The empire crumbles from within. If you look at the state of this now, and believe me, I don't hold Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn up as anywhere near pillars of power. These people are just puppets, and they're passing this agenda. But whatever's going on, it's so blatantly ridiculous. You know, they don't even seem to be trying. You've got the likes of Kay Burley on Sky News who, you know, do like what Cathy Newman did to Jordan Peterson, where she kept saying, so what you're saying is this. No, that's not what I'm saying. You're saying that because you want me to be that person, and I'm not saying it like that. So you've got all this agenda that is being pushed by this mainstream bullshit, and they're not even trying anymore. You know, the emperor is clearly bollock naked, and nobody is even trying. Everybody's going, hey, he's bollock naked. Yeah, what should we do about it? Well, I don't know. It's ridiculous, isn't it? You know, everybody can see it. It's. I don't know. I don't know what else needs to happen to actually get people to get off their asses, other than, like I said, what happened to me, where it came up to my door, knocked on my door, punched me in the mouth, and kicked me in the balls. Yeah. Unless something like that happens, a lot of people will not engage because they believe that they can carry on under that radar. And Pippa, when it comes down to your kids, at the end of the day, you would not be the mum that you expect to be if you did not do something about it? And I suppose, does that not raise the question to you that how can other people not think like that?
Well, I mean, one of the main reasons I did do the biometrics in schools was because I wanted my children to be able to grow up in a society where if they disagreed with something, they could protest without consequence.
Exactly.
And I think one of the reasons why the surveillance state is coming in so quickly and sort of under the covers, as it were, is because there is a certain amount of panic, I think, at the high end of control in this society that we are waking up, and we're waking up bloody quickly. And
I agree.
And I think the surveillance and smart cities agenda and the types of frequencies that are coming in are to dumb us down a little bit and to monitor us. You know, the artificial intelligence systems they've got that can potentially predict who, via social media, via, you know, if you started hooking up all the different databases, which obviously Facebook, you know, they're an extension of a lettered agency, aren't they? Essentially, you can start. I mean, I think the problem has been in the past 10 years is they've known all this data is going to be there and it's going to get better. What they haven't been able to do is process it. Now they can process it, and this is we're right at baby steps on the rate at which they can process and analyze this data. In even a year's time, 5 years' time, it's going to be unthinkable to us humans at the rate at which data can be processed and analysed. I personally think surveillance agenda is because they know they've got a problem in controlling us. Yeah. So it wouldn't do to have a population that's happy, would it? You know, you've got to keep them in a state of fear. Yeah. And surveillance, really. I think that's my personal opinion on it. And I think it's a very dangerous route if we allow that to happen. Very dangerous. And I'm trying the best I can to sort of throw a stone under the wheel of the cart, sort of stuff. And a lot of people now doing the same thing. 10 years ago, sort of mid 2000, so 2005, 2006, there was literally a handful of us, and we just kept in touch via email, and that was it. Social media really wasn't as prolific as it was today. No. But now it's great. There's hundreds of people doing stuff. I was sort of involved loosely in the anti-fracking in East Yorkshire, where I used to live, and that was just amazing. It brought people together from all walks of life. You had the grey pound, retired people, you had people that were unemployed, you had people, mums, you had kids, you had dads, you had farmers. And what they were doing was they're sitting around anti-fracking camps and actually physically talking to each other. People would never normally sit down together socially and have a chat, were suddenly coming together. And the section of the population that I was most heartened by was the sort of 65 to 70 plus. Because they have been lied to. I mean, I have been lied to, and I'm only in my 40s. They've had a lifetime of it. Yeah. And to see them gradually realise that they've been fed a crock of crap for the whole lifetime, and they get annoyed, and they've got time on their hands, and quite often they've got money because they've got pensions, something that I probably won't have. Yeah. And I'm heartened by that particular section of activism, and I think the similar sort of thing is, or could potentially be happening in Sheffield with the trees. Yeah. And bring that up then. Social media is great, and let that. I don't sort of check myself on social media, and I don't post an awful lot of anything personal. But I've just figured right from day dot that anything I do electronically is traceable. And to be honest, I don't care. Let them know. I really don't care, because morally I've got the high ground, and I know that. So
it was interesting what you're saying about people coming together, like the fracking and stuff like that. That all people from all kinds of walks of life, really. Because I've got a fracking site up near me at Barton Moss. Oh yeah. Well, some of my work colleagues, they have to come in past there, and if the motorways are full, it's a nice, quick, easy run. But obviously, when everybody has that idea. But it's worse when the lads and girls have done a lock-on at the fracking site. They've come in work and they're going, effing this and effing that and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, saying that, all these idiots just doing that. And look at, I'm 20 minutes later, I went, do you know all those idiots that you keep calling? You need them, because they're going to try and stop your water table being permanently poisoned. That's what they're doing, and you will not go and do that. So you need people to go and do that, because I need people to go and do that. Do you know what I mean? So absolutely. What's happened with the up in Sheffield? You've got people who just love trees, and you've got the 5G people who are going, well, this is why you tree lovers, this is why these are being taken down, because it interferes with this smart grid. Oh, that's a load of bullshit. They believe in that conspiracy theory. But at the end of the day, some of them will look. Some of them will look, and they can't unhear something.
I think Ian Crane nails it when he said, there's a lot of people that are very much in favour of, the climate's warming up and X, Y, and Z, we shouldn't be bringing fossil fuels out of the ground on the anti-fracking thing. And then you've got people saying, that's a load of crap. Climate change is a myth of, oil, tariffs, whatever. And Ian will sort of say, look, don't talk about the things you don't agree with. Let's just agree to agree with what we agree with. Yeah, and yes, have a healthy conversation, but the respect has to, that's exactly what the people in charge want. They want us to be fractured and falling out. You've got to absolutely concentrate on the same agenda, and I really hope that happens in Sheffield. And they can both agree to disagree, but actually the most important thing is actually really keeping those trees up, because of the for many reasons, but just for aesthetic reasons. They're good for the soul, they're great for wildlife, insects. There's a whole ecosystem there.
They give us oxygen for a start.
Well, they're living things, we have to start to show respect and not be as bloody selfish as a human race on the environment around us.
Yeah, growing up, take some responsibility for yourself. Do you know when you talk about changing the world, change something in your world, because I guarantee it, when I started to change things in my world, the world around me started to change. That you can't explain that to somebody. You've just got to be able to do it. And the changes that have happened to me is quite well documented over the last 10 years. Had they not happened, I would not be the man who is sat here now.
Yeah.
It's those events that have moulded me and put me on a path that I tried to get off the path so many times, and it just ended up with me straight back on it. And I'm sat here now talking about this stuff, and people say, oh, well, you're not really talking to many people. You're just probably in your own echo chamber talking to people just like-minded. Well, do you know what? I speak to people who haven't got a clue about this stuff every single day. And when I mention it, I would say 8, maybe 9 out of 10 people go, hey, you're right about that. And then they walk away. Now, what if they just think about that a little bit and then tell it to somebody else? That's how it's got to work. Am I just going to walk out and then speak to, 70 million people and convert everybody? No, it's not going to work like that. So,
I've done talks where there's been literally a handful of people there, and it's been great because it's been more like a conversation, and people have said, don't you mind? And actually, to be honest, I have got up and spoken at big events, and I hate it. I don't have a lot of confidence, but anyway, I'll do it because it needs to be done.
Yeah.
But I don't care, because it only has to be, you only have to reach one other person. Like Jen, the mum who set up Defend Digital Me. I was honest, I said, I haven't got time, I'd love to do it, but do you know what, you do it. And she did, and what an impact she's made. And that was just one person, and you only need a handful of those. But I have to say as well that I wouldn't be able to do what I did, travel down to London, put the amount of time into it, if it wasn't for my husband. So even though there are people like myself that are sort of visibly going out and doing stuff, the big hats off to the people behind the scenes, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And he is absolutely as responsible for the changing legislation and the work I've done as I am, because I needed that support. I couldn't have done it without him. So, yeah, you certainly
do. You certainly need that support, Pippa. You can't. You can call it fortunate or whatever, but the fact is that I'm on my own now. My responsibilities. My daughter's 23. I've not got that responsibility. Whereas if I had a partner living with me, a gas bill coming through, they're going to be panicking about. Whereas when you've got family involved, if they're not on board, it makes it difficult. And the fact that you've had that support is, it's second to none, isn't it?
Absolutely. So yes, a big hats off to all the people behind the scenes that never get on radio shows and just are there doing the washing up while somebody else is typing away, sending an email somewhere. Or this is as much, a sort of thank you to them, not thank you to them, but just to recognise all those people, because they are absolutely as important as other stuff that we do. And I know from speaking to other activists, it changes you. I mean, it's changed me over the past 10 years, and I know me and my husband have split up, and we're still best buds and everything's good, but it has changed me as a person. And I know from speaking to other people doing similar things, it does change you. And like you said, you set on a path that I had no idea 15 years ago I'm ever going to go down this route, but I have, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I hope I've been as kind as I can to people on the way when things haven't worked out perhaps as they should have done, but it's so important for me to, it sounds really sort of Jesus complex, but try and create a world for the next generation that where I had the freedom when I was a child and growing up to a certain extent, I'd really like to extend that respect to the next generation, because it's gradually increasingly looking like they probably won't get it, but over my dead body.
But it's true that's you hit the nail on the head. You've got to be able to do that. When you're put into that position, you either fight or flight, and some people have just got to face up to it. I had no option. You had no option. I lost best friends. I was best man at my mate's wedding. Doesn't talk to me anymore because my life view has completely changed. He thinks Winston Churchill's a war hero, and I think he's a war criminal. That's how basic we've completely gone apart. I think the right people seem to fall away at the right times, don't you think, Pippa?
That's a sad thing, though, isn't it, Paul? It is a sad thing. I know you're talking about you lost your best friend. I've lost a slipper. I've only got one slipper at the moment. I don't know whether Watson, my little puppy, has nicked it and took it away and gone anywhere with it. I don't know where it is. But we've all it's a fact. You will lose people along the way, but as long as you stick to yourself and your own truth and your what you feel is right, then you can't go very far wrong. What would you think to that, Pippa? Okay.
Oh, it appears we've lost Pippa. Well,
am I still here? Hello?
You're back.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
No, I think you're right, Jason. I think that's fair to be said about life in general. Anyway, you do sort of lose people along the way, but you can certainly gain a lot of people as well. And like I said, over the past sort of 10, 14 years I've been doing this, I've seen a big shift in people's attitudes towards government, institutions, authorities, rights, getting a bit more guts to do something about it. So I'm optimistic. I'm quite sort of seeing this avalanche of technology come in, but I'm optimistic. I think it's important, definitely. This shit can depress you. Sorry.
The technology is absolutely amazing, but it's pretty astonishing that 3-4 people with pretty good equipment can't even make a bloody Skype call, isn't it? But I just like to pose this thought just before the end. It's slightly off topic, but going back a little bit to what we were talking about the IRA. Dinny's just pointed out in the chat room they've released the Birmingham 6 and the Guildford 4 because they were jailed as patsies and it was proven, but they don't seem to have bothered looking for the people who did it. All a bit hush hush, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
we know the reasons for that, though, Andy.
Of course we do. Yeah.
To read between the lines on that one, what do you think?
Yeah, but and also I just wanted to just give Webby a bit of thought for next time he's talking to somebody. Instead of telling them about the gas, water, and electric, he should do like John Hull and tell him about Raconteurs News, because he tells everybody he talks to. So thanks for that, John.
Brilliant.
What do you mean? I've got bloody Benty doing 2 EDs for me so I can come on this show. Everybody knows about Raconteurs.
Well, are you going to wrap up, Andy? I think we're sort of towards the end of the show. Are you going to wrap up? Because I'm not feeling too well. I've just been and got rid of the contents of my stomach. So I'm not feeling too smart, but perhaps it's probably best for you to wrap up. Thank Pippa for coming on the show tonight and invite her back again in sometime in the very near future when I'm feeling okay and I'll be able to give her a bit of a more of a grilling than I've been able to do tonight because I'm not feeling very smart. So are you gonna wrap up, Andy and Paul?
Well, I think you've just done it, mate.
Who we got on next week?
Paul, you've got somebody lined up, haven't you?
I've got quite a few actually lined up. I won't say anything on air yet because some of them I need to sort dates out. But Anthony Carlin's going to let me know as soon as. Ian Crane, I'm still waiting on. It's possibly Monday or Tuesday next week. I could have Ian on, but he's a busy fellow. He's not even seen it yet, so.
I'm going to have Mark Devlin lined up and also Matt Conspiro as well. I don't know if you know him, but he's a friend of mine going back from a number of years. We've been friends and we've spoken on forums and things like that. But it'd be great to speak to him. I've never spoken to him in person, so it'd be great to speak to him on the show. He's got a great take on the Beatles and how they fit into this whole thing that we're talking about now. So and hopefully we'll have Matt or Mark Devlin for some time in the next couple of weeks' time as well. So you've got some great guests getting lined up as well. I've got some. I'm sure Andy has as well. Andy, you need to finish off. Give Pippa the last word. And let's bugger off so that I can go and be sick again.
Yeah. Pippa, if you've got just a final message or you want to give out your links and how people can contact you, then the last few minutes is yours.
Oh, thank you. So I have a blog called Biometrics in Schools, which is at pippaking.blogspot.co.uk that has been running since 2006. So it's the only website really that's dedicated to the use of biometrics in schools. And I also have another one called stateofsurveillance.blogspot.com and another one called RFID in schools. There was a case where a school in Cheshire thought it might be a good idea to hang active RFID chips around 5,500 kids' necks. This was about 4 years ago. So that's all on there. But I have a Twitter handle as well, and you'll find Biometrics in Schools on Facebook. But thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. It's great coming back on, and hopefully if people do spot any facial recognition on millimeter microwave scanners, please do let me know. I'd like to see where and when they're being used.
Sure. Thanks ever so much for tonight, Pippa. Thanks to Jason, particularly he's not feeling well, but he's soldiered on tonight. Well done, mate. Thanks to Paul. Great conversation again tonight, Paul. And thanks to everybody out there listening. And we'll be back same time, same place, Monday and Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Good night, folks.
I'm off to the hole in the road. I'm walking off school and I'm off to the city, watching telly all night and I'm not looking pretty. See, I got this job downtown, selling knocked off ladies' watches for £1 for a really dodgy man that I met in a dodgy cafe. You know, he said to me, the girl who sold these yesterday wasn't selling very carefully. Police came along and took her and all my watches away. So if you see some coppers, you grab my stuff and leg it, boy, right away. I'll be in the cafe. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making his way through life. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making his way. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making cigars and I haven't sold enough for my bus fare home. Street selling's pretty tough, so I turn on the charm for the lunchtime rush. With a smile and a wiggle on my schoolboy touch. Oh, the charm is working in the underground. There's a crowd of men and women gather round, and the watches they are going, the money is a flowing. Think I'll take a little extra, stick it in my pocket, spend you later. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making his way through life. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making his way. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making his way through life. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making his way. I haven't sold a watch for an hour and I'm dying for a slash. I've had enough of this, so I'm off for a piss. Then a quick walk back round to the cafe. Sitting at his table drinking tea, looks at me suspiciously. Then with a glance at the watch he says, how did you do? He paid me a couple of quid, then he said, would you like to come and work another day? I said I'd come back down on Friday, and to that he said okay. So with £2 in my pocket and another 5 in my shoe, I nipped down to Castle Market, where a man who looks like Leo Sayer is selling pots with cockles and prawns. You make me feel like dancing. Then off back to dinner on the Wiggers and then home. I'm just a boy from Sheffield, making his